After rebirth, I gave up on Ford Lou, no longer foolishly believing he had good reasons for standing me up on our engagement day, no longer carrying luggage north to find him in the bitter winter, freezing my hands and feet until they cracked, and certainly no longer hiding away to cry in secret after learning he married another woman, only to freeze to death in the cold winter. This time, I threw the engagement ring directly into the lake. I informed both sets of parents first. The engagement was off, and I was leaving the country, when Ford Lou jumped into the icy lake in late autumn, struggling to retrieve the ring, and humbly asked me why. I stared at his face, pale from the cold, and drove the knife deeper into his heart. Nothing, I just don't love you anymore. I stood by the lake, clutching the engagement ring in my hand. Under the sunlight, the diamond on the ring sparkled brilliantly, like stars in the night sky. It was breathtakingly beautiful. In 1986. Such a diamond ring was not only beautiful but also incredibly valuable. I curled my lips into a bitter smile, raised my hand, and without a moment's hesitation, flung it far away. With a dull thud, the ring sank heavily to the bottom of the lake, its brilliance instantly swallowed by the water. I turned and walked away, not sparing it another glance. Ford Lou, I don't care for the ring you gave me anymore. I was reborn on the day before Ford Lou and I were to get engaged. This ring was carefully chosen by Ford Lou, and before the engagement day even arrived, he couldn't wait to put it on my finger in advance. In his words, "Ray, I can't wait another day. I wish I could make you my bride today." At that time, I shed tears of happiness, thinking I would live in Ford Lou's heart for the rest of my life, until the next day, when he stood me up at the engagement banquet in front of all our family and friends. He disappeared, completely vanished into thin air. No one knew where he had gone. Like a madman, I abandoned all the guests and searched every corner of the military compound's residential area for any trace of him. In the end, all I found was a farewell letter he had left on his desk. "I, Ray Jiang, realized just before our engagement that I never loved you. Don't look for me. Our fate has run its course." I stared blankly at those two lines, feeling as if my heart were being sliced by a knife. Even breathing was painful. That was his handwriting. I recognized it. I don't know how I managed to walk out of the residential building with that letter in hand, only remembering being tightly surrounded by a bustling crowd of guests downstairs. They blocked my way and asked, "Where's Ford? What did he say? Hurry up and look again." Ford must have been delayed by something in the military. No one even considered the possibility that Ford Lou had abandoned me, because everyone in the military family compound knew that Ford Lou loved me like his own life. And his desire to marry me wasn't just a recent thought. Since childhood, Ford Lou and I had been inseparable, always seen together. Both sets of parents had long assumed we would eventually get married, so they often jokingly referred to each other as in-laws. People in the residential compound also frequently said how lucky I was. "Ray, you're really blessed to be marrying Ford. You won't even have to leave our compound. Everyone knows each other here, and Ford dotes on you so much." They kept saying it so often that over time, I started to believe it too. Every time, I would blush shyly, too embarrassed to respond, while Ford Lou openly admitted it without hesitation. He grabbed my hand firmly and grinned at the neighbors. "That's right, I'm definitely going to marry Ray someday. I must marry Ray." Ford Lou's eyes shone with unwavering determination, as if making a vow to the heavens. Back then, I naively believed Ford Lou truly loved me, only to realize in the end that I was just a clown, reborn. "This time, I will live for myself. Ford Lou, please disappear from my world." I threw away the ring and went home, where I saw my parents after a long time, remembering how much they worried about me in my past life, and how their hair turned white over my marriage. I couldn't help but feel a lump in my throat. I hugged them tightly, and my tears shamelessly soaked their shoulders. As soon as she saw me crying, my mother immediately became tense. "Ray, what's wrong? Did you have a fight with Ford? Don't cry, don't cry. Tell me what happened." My mother wiped away my tears with a pained expression, her own eyes turning red as she did so. "Dad is much calmer than Mom." He took a drag of his cigarette and said in a deep voice, "Ford is a sensible child. If there's any issue, talk to him properly. Don't sulk in secret by yourself." Suppressing the guilt in my heart, I wiped away my tears, and finally, a hint of determination appeared in my eyes. Dad, Mom, I want to call off the engagement with Fordlou. I won't be getting engaged tomorrow. My tone was unusually resolute, startling both of them. Their faces turned pale for a moment, wanting to persuade me. But in the end, they all held back. Ray, are you sure about this? My mother gently tucked the loose strands of hair behind my ear, her eyes filled with heartache. I nodded solemnly. I'm sure. Dad frowned, sighed heavily with a solemn expression. Marriage is a serious matter. Once you make a decision, it's not easy to go back on it. I pressed my lips tightly together and clenched my fists. I promise I won't regret it. How could I ever regret it? In my past life, for the love of Fordlou, I firmly believed that he didn't abandon me willingly. There must have been a reason, so I pressured both families to use all their connections to help me find Fordlou. Finally, I learned he had appeared in Heilongjiang province, ignoring my family's pleas. I packed my bags and trekked through mountains and rivers to that harsh, bitter cold land of Heilongjiang. In the bitter cold of winter, my hands and feet were covered with frostbite, festering and oozing pus, the pain so unbearable that I could only walk with a cane. After countless hardships, when I finally found Fordlou in an upscale cafe, there was already another woman by his side. Clad in a warm woolen coat, she clung to Fordlou's arm, looking down at me with an air of superiority. In my tattered, thin clothes, gaunt and worn out, she stood before me like a noblewoman. While I resembled nothing more than a beggar on the street, I grabbed Fordlou and demanded to know why he had abandoned me. Fordlou resolutely shook me off, his eyes as cold as ice. Who are you? Sorry, I don't know you. With that, he turned and walked away with the woman without looking back. I chased after them and demanded to know who the woman was. Fordlou curled his lips into a faint smile, gazing at the woman with eyes full of affection. This is naturally my wife. Please stop bothering me. It's time for us to go home. Watching their retreating figures leaning against each other, my tears instantly burst forth like a dam breaking. My heart shattered beyond repair. By then, I had spent the last penny I had, huddled in a drafty, broken-down warehouse, shivering uncontrollably. My tears froze almost as soon as they fell, crying until I lost consciousness. Then, I remained forever in the bitterly cold winter night of Heilongjiang province, never to wake again. Looking back on my past life, I was pitifully foolish, but since fate has given me a chance to be reborn, I must cherish it and never again waste my precious youth for Fordlou. I want to draw a clear line with him, once and for all. When they found out I wanted to break off the engagement, the entire Liu family was in an uproar. Fordlou rushed to my house in a hurry, his eyes reddened, his fingers gripping my shoulders turning white and trembling slightly. Ray, are you abandoning me? His clear tears streamed down his sharply chiseled cheeks. I remained expressionless. Exactly. I don't want you anymore. In this life, I just want to live well, far away from Fordlou. Hearing my resolute words, Fordlou's lips trembled slightly. I don't believe it, Ray. You clearly accepted my ring. He naturally grasped my left hand wearing the ring, but the moment his fingertips brushed over it, his face froze. He didn't feel the presence of the ring. He panicked, clutching my hand tightly. He lifted it to see. Indeed, the middle finger was bare. His eyes instantly turned bloodshot. Ray, where's the ring? His voice trembled as if someone had suddenly squeezed his heart. My eyes stung slightly as I forcefully suppressed the last trace of attachment I had for him in my heart. Throw it away, I said coldly. Where did you throw it? Into the lake. The next second, Fordlou dashed out, leaving me behind. An hour later, he stood before me again, drenched from head to toe, with water even trickling down his pant legs. Strands of hair clung to his forehead. In the late autumn season, the lake water was bone-chillingly cold. He was so frozen that his face turned pale, and even his lips turned purple. Ray, I found the ring. He knelt before me on one knee, trembling. Let me propose to you again. Say yes, okay. Looking at his disheveled and pitiful appearance, I couldn't help but let out a cold laugh. Fordlou, who are you trying to impress with this act of deep affection? I left him shivering in the cold wind and turned to walk away, but he grabbed me by the arm. Ray, why so sudden? I didn't even turn my head. just feigned nonchalance with a shrug. Nothing much. I just don't love you anymore. Our fate has run its course. Fordlu, in this life, it's my turn to say these words to you. From the day the engagement was called off, Fordlu never bothered me again, and I had no interest in dealing with him, focusing all my energy instead on studying abroad, in my past life, to stay by Fordlu's side. I even gave up the opportunity for a government-sponsored study abroad that my advisor had secured for me, insist on staying and getting engaged to Fordlu, but this time I've figured it out. People should live for themselves after all. Upon learning of my sudden change of heart, my mentor couldn't help but be surprised. Aren't you afraid of leaving Fordlu alone in the country? Not only the entire family compound, but even the school knew about my relationship with Fordlu. On one hand, my advisor hoped I would go abroad for further studies, but on the other hand, he couldn't bear to break me and Fordlu apart. I tugged at the corner of my lips and said indifferently, whether he's lonely or not is no longer my concern. Hearing the coldness in my words, my advisor was momentarily taken aback. What's the matter? Had a little lover's quarrel? He cautiously probed. I shook my head. I'm calling off the engagement. From now on, he's him, and I'm me. As I said these words, my heart couldn't help but sink, as if I had forcibly uprooted a seed that had been buried deep within me for years, one that had already taken root. Upon hearing this, my advisor let out a slight sigh. Ray, you must think this through carefully. Once you go abroad, seeing Fordlu again won't be so. Before he could finish speaking, I interrupted him. Don't worry, Professor, I will never regret it. Seeing my determination, my advisor finally handed me the materials for studying abroad. As I walked out of the office holding the documents, the corners of my eyes felt slightly warm. I wasn't sure if it was the excitement of embracing a new life or the regret over past emotions. In any case, my feelings were a tangled mix. While flipping through the materials in my hand as I exited the office building, I unexpectedly collided with someone. Sorry, I was about to apologize when I looked up and met a pair of weary, weathered eyes. It was Fordlu. He looked as if he hadn't slept all night. With dark circles under his eyes, gazing at me with a profound intensity. Meeting again, the atmosphere was so cold it seemed about to freeze over. His slightly pale lips parted, and after a long pause, he finally managed to squeeze out a sentence. Ray, I heard you're going abroad. I was amazed at how well-informed Fordlu was. I haven't told anyone about my plans to go abroad except my parents. My gaze darkened as I averted my eyes and brushed past him. He suddenly grabbed my wrist. His voice trembled with sorrow. Ray, won't you even say a word to me? His humble tone made my heart suddenly tighten, but I ruthlessly suppressed this worthless heartache. Ray Jiang, it's time you learned from your mistakes. I don't want to. I kept a straight face and deliberately spoke crudely. Where I go is none of your damn business. As soon as the words left my mouth, I saw his clenched fist trembling. The next second, with a forceful move, he pinned me against the cold, hard wall of the office building. Ray, if you leave now, we might never see each other again in this lifetime. Do you know that? He roared, his voice hoarse as if his throat were filled with blood. I was stunned by him. Since childhood, I had never seen Fordlu lose his temper so fiercely. He was always gentle by nature and never raised his voice. What on earth happened to him? Did he take the wrong medicine, or was he so devastated after I dumped him that he completely lost it? He must have been devastated. After calming down, I coldly curled the corner of my lips. That's for the best. Anyway, I've long grown tired of looking at your face. Get lost. I pushed him hard with all my strength. When my fingertips touched his frail shoulders, the feather-light sensation sent a shiver through my heart. How could Fordlu have lost so much weight in just a few days? Before, his shoulders had been broad and sturdy. I often lean on his shoulder, laughing and teasing him until he gets worked up. Then he'd scoop me up in his arms and spin me around several times, only putting me down triumphantly when I'd get dizzy, crying and begging for mercy. This was the only way Fordlu ever punished me, though it seemed like punishment. It was always him who later spent ages comforting me, massaging my throbbing temples and brewing sweet syrup for me. Recalling these moments, my eyes grow slightly moist, my nails dug deep into my palms. the sharp pain keeping me clinging to the last shred of my sanity. I brushed against his shoulder and walked away resolutely. At the moment we passed each other, the corner of my eye caught a glimpse of his face. The corners of his lips twitched into a bitter, desolate smile as he murmured under his breath, "Maybe it's better this way, you won't receive news of my death when I'm gone." I frowned. Feeling he was being utterly inexplicable, I thought from then on, I would never see Ford Liu again. Yet as I boarded the car to the airport under my parents' earnest and reluctant gazes, far in the distance, at the very edge of the crowd seeing me off, I spotted Ford Liu. He has gotten thinner. His gaunt shoulders were hidden within the straight military uniform, somewhat like a child sneaking into an adult's clothes. The dullness in his eyes finally flickered with a barely perceptible light the moment they met mine. His lips moved slightly, but in the end, he didn't say a word. His knuckles turned slightly white from clenching his fist. Afraid of giving him any more false impressions, I quickly averted my gaze. "Ray, take good care of yourself when you're abroad. Call Mom when you have time." Outside the car window, my mother tightly held my hand. The warmth of her palm and the moisture at the corners of her eyes made me temporarily forget about Ford Liu. I fought back the sting in my nose and nodded repeatedly. Amid the reluctance of my loved ones, the car finally started moving. I faintly sensed a pair of burning eyes piercing through the crowd, fixed intently on me. He seemed to be trying desperately to pull me back, but was powerless to do so. I deliberately avoided looking at Ford Liu. Yet the corner of my eye still caught his figure jerking suddenly as the car started moving. Only when the car had slowly driven some distance away did I dare to glance back through the rear window. One last look at him, I suppose. Outside the window, Ford Liu kept chasing the car, his face flushed and breath ragged. Yet he gritted his teeth and showed no intention of stopping. My heart clenched tightly. I turned to the driver and said, "Step on it, please, in a hurry, Ford Liu, this time. It's my turn to break up with you." The days of studying abroad are long and arduous. The unfamiliar environment, language, and often tedious coursework frequently leave me breathless. Every day is a back and forth between the classroom and the apartment, a monotonous routine. Sometimes I would even stay up all night working on research topics. The busy life temporarily made me forget about Ford Liu. I thought I would never hear anything about him again, until one evening a week after going abroad. I received an overseas phone call. It was Aunt Lou calling. After I broke off the engagement with Ford Liu, I had no further contact with the elderly couple from the Liu family. When I suddenly proposed to break off the engagement, the elderly couple from the Liu family firmly disagreed. They thought Ford Liu had upset me and personally came to persuade me to stay, but at that time, I was determined to sever ties with Ford Liu, so I didn't even meet with the elderly couple from the Liu family. Presumably, that time they were deeply hurt, and they never came to my house again after that. I was a bit surprised to find out the call was from Aunt Lou. "Ray, this is your Aunt Lou." Her voice trembled, choked with tears. I had a vague premonition. Something must have happened to Ford Liu. "What's wrong, Auntie Lou? Please don't cry." I tried my best to calm her down, forgetting that my own heart had unknowingly tightened with worry. Aunt Lou sobbed as she asked me, "Ray, have you seen Ford? Did he come looking for you?" Her hopeful voice made it hard for me to disappoint her. My voice caught in my throat, unable to come out for a long time. Noticing my hesitation, Aunt Lou's sobs became even more uncontrollable. "Ray, Ford is missing." I didn't catch the rest of her words, as they were all drowned out by Aunt Lou's weeping. Then came Uncle Lou's consoling voice with a sigh, "He's a grown man. He'll be fine. Why did you even call Ray?" Then, the overseas call was abruptly ended. I listened to the beeping sound on the phone, and my heart skipped a beat. Why has Ford Liu gone missing again? If in the previous life he was avoiding me, then what's the reason this time? I hung up the phone, feeling a slight heaviness in my heart. For that woman, Ford Liu truly loved her deeply. Ford Liu abandoned his family and career for that woman. While I completed my studies in a foreign land, 3 years passed, and upon returning to China, I had become the nation's top psychology expert. In addition to conducting psychological evaluations for some criminals, I also treat some special patients. 1 month after returning to work in China, I never expected my life to intersect with Ford Liu's again. It was an utterly ordinary afternoon when Chen Nannan, the student I was mentoring, knocked on my office door. "Professor, there's a rather difficult patient. I'm a bit." She looked troubled. I paused for a moment, put down the pen in my hand, and then calmly asked, "What kind of patient?" "Take your time." Chen Nannan sat down, appearing slightly uneasy. "A patient who has repeatedly attempted suicide. He's also from the military compound. His body is covered in scars, all self-inflicted with a knife, and there are many on his wrists," recalling the scene she had just witnessed. Chen Nannan's face showed a horrified expression. "According to the police, this person has jumped into a river, taken poison, and slit his wrists. Anyway, I'm determined to die." Chen Nannan frowned, tightly pursing her lips. From her expression, I could imagine how strong the patient's determination to die was. Otherwise, given the experiences Chen Nannan had witnessed in the month she'd been following me, she wouldn't have shown such a troubled expression. I clipped the pen onto my lab coat pocket and followed Chen Nannan out the door. "I'll go take a look." In the ward, the heavy scent of disinfectant filled the air. The man lay on the bed, his face as pale as paper. With bandages wrapped around his arms, legs, and wrists, his eyes were dull and gray, like two emotionless black holes. Two public security officers sat beside him, sitting bolt upright, keeping an unblinking watch over him. When they saw me arrive, they stood up. "Dr. Jiang, you're finally here." "He's still shouting about wanting to die, complaining that we shouldn't have saved him." The police officers looked troubled. I nodded. "Hand him over to me." The two officers exchanged glances before finally leaving the ward with relief. I could tell that the moment they stepped out the door, they visibly relaxed, as if a weight had been lifted from their shoulders. Indeed, the atmosphere in this hospital room was far too oppressive. A deathly silence filled the air, so quiet you could hear a pin drop. I sat in the chair previously occupied by the police officer, gazing softly at the patient lying in bed. "A person must have a reason to want to die. What's your reason?" I looked at the wounds, large and small, covering his body. Some were still bleeding through the bandages, showing just how deeply he had cut. Hearing my words, he closed his eyes in despair and remained silent. "I understand how you feel. I believe everyone has the right to decide their own life and death. They shouldn't have stopped you." I used the most basic technique of a psychologist, thinking from the patient's perspective. Seeing me take the opposite approach, he finally showed a slight reaction, lifting his eyelids slightly as his parched lips moved. "Since you know, just let me die." His voice was hoarse, filled with despair for life. "If Arya is dead, what's the point of me living?" He mentioned a crucial name, Arya. Arya. My heart tightened, and I instinctively asked, "Arya Liu?" A flash of surprise immediately crossed his eyes. "You know her?" I tugged at the corner of my lips, my gaze dark and heavy. "More than just knowing her. Arya Liu is the woman who haunts Ford Liu's dreams, the one for whom he even abandoned me on the day of our engagement banquet. I never imagined Ford Liu could be so despicable. The woman he loves actually has a fiancé, stealing love from another. Has Ford Liu's love for her reached the point of being uncontrollable? To win her over, is Ford Liu willing to bear such infamy?" For the first time, I felt a deep disgust toward Ford Liu, along with a faint sense of my own sorrow, that in over 20 years, I had never truly seen Ford Liu for who he was. Meng Jichao, tears streaming down his face, told me that Arya Liu had died during a mission and that he no longer wanted to live either. At this moment, I felt profoundly how unworthy it all was for Meng Jichao, because memories from my past life tell me that Arya Liu never died. At this very moment, she's living carefree with Ford Liu in Heilongjiang. She had already become Ford Liu's wife, accompanying him to high-end venues every day, inseparable as a pair. Only Meng Jichao remained foolishly convinced that his fiancée had been murdered. He cried until his eyes were bloodshot. "Poor me, I didn't even get to see Arya one last time. They said Arya's body still hasn't been found." Meng Jichao cried, frantically tearing at the bandages on his body. Blood seeped out from beneath them, stinging my eyes. "Calm down," I tried to hold him down. But Meng Jichao's strength was surprisingly great. His voice trembled violently, causing the blood on his body to seep out faster. "We were about to get married. Why did she suddenly leave me alone?" Arya, darling, don't worry, I'll be with you soon, very soon." His pupils were trembling, radiating a blissful light as if ready to face death, his pale lips curling upward. Blood soaked my sleeve, and only then did I notice that all the bandages on his body had been torn off. "Doctor, hurry up." I had no choice but to shout loudly. The next second, doctors, nurses, and police officers all rushed into the ward in a crowd. I was pushed aside by the surge of people and ended up standing at the very edge. They were busy trying to save Meng Jichao, while I stood there with a whirlwind of emotions in my heart. My hanging hand clenched tightly, and I unknowingly gritted my teeth. The hatred that had been suppressed was now quietly rekindling in my heart. How could they hurt someone so devoted like this? If she saw Meng Jichao in this state, wouldn't Arya Liu's heart ache? Perhaps they simply have no heart and feel no pain. But how can there not be even the slightest punishment? I spent the whole night thinking it over, but ultimately dismissed the idea of telling Meng Jichao the truth. Everyone has their own fate. My role isn't to expose Arya Liu, but to help Meng Jichao resolve his emotional turmoil and let go of Arya Liu. Yet this rationality lasted only a day before I gave up, because the hospital sent word that after being resuscitated last night, Meng Jichao hanged himself in the ward that same night. Fortunately, the nurse discovered it in time and performed a second round of emergency treatment on him. This time, Meng Jichao had already fallen into a coma, with only his last breath remaining. By the time I arrived at the hospital, Chen Nannan had even told me that there was no saving him. I pushed her aside, barged in, and grabbed Meng Jichao's arm. "Meng Jichao, hang in there. Arya Liu isn't dead at all. She's lying to you." I couldn't do it. Couldn't help Arya Liu deceive Meng Jichao, couldn't stand by and watch him die without lifting a finger. Meng Jichao's tightly closed eyes twitched slightly. It seemed he had truly heard my words. "Teacher, your method really works." Chen Nannan thought I was deliberately provoking Meng Jichao, her eyes filled with admiration for me. I pursed my lips tightly, my eyes fixed intently on Meng Jichao. Before long, he slowly opened his eyes. "Arya." He woke up, and the first thing he did was call out her name. My heart wrenched painfully once again. "Meng Jichao, I'm sorry, I never told you, but I know Arya Liu's whereabouts. She's not dead, not only didn't die, but is living well." Perhaps only by letting Meng Jichao see Arya Liu could he reignite his will to live. To be precise, only then could he truly see Arya Liu's character. Upon hearing my words, Meng Jichao instantly clutched my sleeve tightly. "Are you serious? No, you're not lying to me." His dull, grey eyes seemed to light up instantly, kindling a hope for life. I nodded solemnly. "I'm not lying to you. First, focus on recovering from your injuries, and then I'll take you to Heilongjiang province to find her immediately." Meng Jichao couldn't wait for his injuries to fully heal. As soon as he could walk, he was eager to go to Heilongjiang province to find Arya Liu. I agreed to his request. "Go one day earlier, and Meng Jichao's heart will be unburdened one day sooner." Sitting on the train to He province, I was bundled up so thickly that I might as well have been a rice dumpling. Winters in He province are bitterly cold, so cold that just the thought of it makes me shiver uncontrollably, with my hands and feet aching in response. As the train gradually approached Heilongjiang province, a thick layer of frost slowly accumulated on the windows in the darkness of the night. During the journey, Meng Jichao suddenly asked me, "Dr. Jiang, how did you know Arya Liu was in Heilongjiang province?" He finally remembered to ask me this question. I had already prepared an answer long ago. "I have a friend in Heilongjiang province who knows Arya Liu." I was referring to Ford Liu. I wonder how he will react when he sees Ford Liu again after 3 years. Everything went much smoother than I expected. It was the same upscale cafe where Meng Jichao and I waited for 2 days before finally meeting Ford Liu and Arya Liu. This time, there was an additional person with them, a man in a well-tailored suit with slicked back hair. I found it strange and was pondering why this scene differed from my past life when Meng Jichao suddenly lost control and charged toward Arya Liu. "Arya!" Meng Jichao went wild with emotion, grabbing Arya Liu in a tight embrace. "Arya, you're really not dead. Why did you lie to me? Why?" He clung desperately to Arya Liu, refusing to let go no matter what. Arya Liu was instantly frightened, her face turning crimson as she pushed Meng Jichao away with all her might. "Who are you?" I don't know you." Her eyes reddened like those of a startled fawn, yet the flicker of guilt in her gaze betrayed her. "Arya, what did you say?" Meng Jichao was instantly stunned, staring blankly at Arya Liu with eyes full of disappointment and unfamiliarity. Arya Liu quickly linked arms with Ford Liu beside her, whispering coquettishly, "Ford, let's go quickly." At this moment, Ford Liu remained motionless, as if frozen in place, his gaze fixed blankly on a single spot. Arya Liu followed his line of sight and realized that the person Ford Liu was staring at was me. "Ford," she shook Ford Liu's arm. Ford Liu seemed to snap back to reality in an instant, responding with a blank expression. "What are you looking at? Let's go quickly." Ford Liu nodded, withdrawing his gaze from me, eager to leave with Arya Liu, yet I clearly noticed his eyes stealing several glances at me. I stood in the icy, snow-covered land, gazing at Ford Liu, whom I hadn't seen in 3 years, with eyes colder than the depths of winter, just as Ford Liu, Arya Liu, and that slick-haired man were about to leave. Meng Jichao lost his mind. He snatched Arya Liu from Ford Liu's arms in one swift motion, and viciously choked her by the neck. "Arya Liu, who is he? You betrayed me. You had your comrade lie to me about your death, then eloped with this man. Is that it?" Arya Liu was being choked to the point of suffocation. She struggled desperately while trying to persuade Meng Jichao. "Jichao, listen to me. Leave first. I'll explain it to you later. Run." She desperately pounded Meng Jichao's arm, but his eyes were already bloodshot, completely unreceptive to any reasoning. The next second, under the winter sun, a cold glint flashed before my eyes. The man with the slicked-back hair suddenly pulled out a dagger and pointed it at Arya Liu. "Arya, look out, we're exposed," I heard Ford Liu's shout. Then, the dagger struck Arya Liu squarely in the chest. As blood spurted out, Meng Jichao's eyes widened in shock, his eyeballs nearly popping out of their sockets. "Arya, what happened, Arya?" He tightly covered Arya Liu's wound, but it was too late. Arya Liu had already collapsed in a pool of blood. Meanwhile, Ford Liu quickly engaged in a fight with the greasy-haired man. "Get Arya out of here now." With bloodshot eyes, he roared at Meng Jichao, but Meng Jichao's heart had already died with Arya Liu. He sat motionless in the snow, staring blankly at the glaring pool of crimson on the ground, his vacant gaze as if his soul had been drained. Only my heart was left hanging with Ford Liu. At the same time, my mind went completely blank. What happened? What's going on here? What does exposed mean? A sudden, explosive conjecture detonated in my mind. So, Ford Liu and Arya Liu aren't really married. Why did he disappear? Was it because he pretended to be a couple with Arya Liu to eliminate enemy spies? After realizing this, my legs gave way, and I collapsed onto the snow. My heart felt as if it were being tightly squeezed, and even my breath froze. Had I misunderstood Ford Liu all along? I dare not think, nor dare I delve deeper. I only felt tears gushing out uncontrollably, blurring my vision. "Ford," I softly called his name. "I finally understand. Why was I reborn? It wasn't because the heavens pitied me and gave me a second chance at life, but because they sought justice for Ford Liu, giving me an opportunity to learn the truth of the matter." I lay on the cold snow, clutching my chest tightly, where the pain was as sharp as a knife. When Ford Liu knocked down the greaser-haired man and ran towards me, I saw behind him the greaser-haired man pull out a dark object from his chest and hurl it fiercely at Ford Liu. "Ford, watch your back." As the explosion sounded, Ford Liu shielded me tightly. A strong smell of blood mixed with the scent of burning filled my nostrils. I was terrified, heartbroken, and couldn't stop trembling all over. Ford, are you okay?" I held his face in my hands, confirming it over and over again. My tears broke free from my eyes, slowly freezing in the icy wilderness. Ford Liu's face was deathly pale, yet he managed to pull the corners of his lips into a faint smile as he gently wiped the tear stains from my cheeks. "Ray, I'm so happy to see you again. My Ray has finally come back. Good, so good." The more he spoke, the paler his lips became, his eyelids gradually growing heavier. "Ford, wake up." I shook him vigorously, but he slowly closed his eyes, at the moment his eyelids shut. A satisfied smile still lingered on his lips. I struggled to crawl out from under him and looked at his back. My heart ached so much I nearly fainted. One of Ford Lou's legs had been blown off. The scene was a complete mess, with charred remains everywhere. Oh my God, what have I done? My mind went blank in an instant. And for the first time, I felt like I truly deserved to die. If it weren't for me, Aria Liu wouldn't have died. Ford Lou won't lose a leg to an explosion. I collapsed onto the snow. My vision went dark, and I completely passed out. The enemy spy was successfully eliminated, but Ford Lou was permanently disabled and could never carry out missions again. Aria Liu sacrificed herself with honor, and the day after her death, Meng Jichao followed her, and I, unscathed, continue to live on in this world. When Ford Lou came to see me in a wheelchair, it was already the second time I had been resuscitated after secretly taking sleeping pills. He looked at my pale little face, and tears suddenly fell. Ray, do you really hate me that much? Would you rather die than spare me another glance? Ford Lou still believes to this day that I attempted suicide because I didn't want to see him. I closed my eyes, but nothing could stop the tears from streaming down my face. Do you know that Meng Jichao is my... Before I could finish my sentence, Ford Lou abruptly cut me off. That has nothing to do with you. It's all just a coincidence. His neck was thick with tension, veins bulging on his forehead. This scene suddenly reminded me of my childhood. Whenever I made a mistake, even though Ford Lou knew it was my fault, he would stubbornly defend me anyway. He was always like this. And eventually, all the kids in the compound said Ford Lou was terribly biased. They even mocked him, saying he was already learning to protect his wife at such a young age. Thinking of childhood memories and looking at Ford Lou's empty pant leg on the right side, my tears mixed with blood as they fell. These past few days, I've nearly cried myself blind. Seeing the blood, Ford Lou was even more nervous than I was. Ray, doctor, hurry, Ray is bleeding. He frantically wheeled his chair around, shouting wildly in the ward until a circle of doctors surrounded me. Only then did he stop. In the end, I didn't manage to die after all, because Ford Lou, dragging his disabled right leg, kept an unblinking watch over me without leaving an inch. Just like how the police had once monitored Meng Jichao, every bite of food I eat, every sip of water I drink, has to go through him first. A disabled man like him spends every day trying to cheer me up, a perfectly healthy person, whether by telling me jokes or taking me out to relax. Others take their girlfriends out for rides on bicycles. But Ford Lou, he takes me out for wheelchair races. He said he had mastered the use of a wheelchair to perfection and wanted to challenge me, an able-bodied person, to a race, to see who could go faster. Whenever I saw him maneuvering his wheelchair, smiling brightly in the breeze and sunlight, I couldn't help but marvel. How could someone be so optimistic? Even without his right leg, he remained as free as a bird. Later, he struggled to stand up from his wheelchair, knelt on the ground with his left leg, and solemnly proposed to me. He said, "Ray, marry me again. Will you?" He said, "Even after becoming disabled, I still live happily because you came back." He said, "Ray, would you be my right leg for the rest of my life?" He added, "I'm sorry. I'll be a burden to you for the rest of my life." But I had already burst into tears. I held him tightly, tears suddenly streaming down my face, 1,000 words choked in my throat. Yet in the end, I couldn't say anything. I just kept nodding. I do, I do, I do. I wish I could say it 10,000 times. Ford Lou, I do.